are there. Awesome. All right, so welcome everybody. My name is Nick. I'm the creator of Eldricore TCG, and this is Michael Kerrick. He is the DBS World Champion right now, and also one of the primary members of the Checkmate Fusion trading card team. Welcome.
What's up? Thanks. Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Yeah, I appreciate you for hanging out. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into it. So first off, you've been playing Eldricore with us for quite a while now. I mean, actually a year almost, just about coming up on pretty close now. So what are your overall thoughts of the game? Because you've had quite a bit of experience playing it at this point.
My overall thoughts of the game. I think my biggest takeaway is it's a game built from somebody who plays card games. And I think that's really good because you can see factors of so many, like the best parts of all card games in this game. And it's also built from somebody who's willing to change his game and balance it as he goes, which is really good. That the team that he works with is really passionate about the game and they really want to make it good. So I think that's going to come up with a really cool product.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And so like you've seen it, right? So like you've seen it from almost the beginning of the testing phase to
Yeah.
now. How much would you say the game has evolved since we first started, like since you first started getting into the testing versus where it is today?
Oh, I mean, it's night and day, right? Like, it's still the same game at its core, right? Like, your mechanics are still the same. The color identities are barely changed from when we started, but cards are more in line with each other now. Now it really feels like you can pick up any deck, any color, not any deck, any color, and feel like you have a standing chance to win the game, which is awesome.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that was one of the main things I was going for, right? Because like it always feels bad when you're gonna get ready for a big tournament and you feel like you have to take this deck or this color just because it's like overall the best. And so that was definitely one thing that I really put energy into, was trying to make sure that, if we held a regional for Eldricore, that people could just come with whatever deck they thought was the most fun.
hmm No, yeah, and it definitely feels like we've made great strides in getting there, for sure.
Oh yeah. And I mean, of course, like players are always going to define a meta, right? Like they're always going to
Yeah.
determine this deck is better or this deck is better. But like, I definitely think the colors are at least close enough that if both players are equally skilled, then you know just about any deck has a chance to beat the other deck
Yeah,
for the
which is
most
really
part.
refreshing. Yeah, right out of the box, that's really refreshing because you have a lot of new games popping up nowadays where that's just not true, right? Like you get like one playable color out of those other games.
Oh
But
yeah.
no, this game, yeah, this game really feels like you're gonna get a chance to play all four. It's really exciting.
Now, so I know you have a lot of experience with a couple of the colors, a little bit of experience with some of the other ones. So when you play a different color in Eldricore, does it feel like an actual different color, or does it feel like the same deck just reskinned to a different color?
It definitely feels like a different color. Color identity is pretty strong in this game. It also helps that we have archetypes in this game, like defined archetypes early on in the game's life, right? So that's going to really help you decide, or really give you a different play style depending on which archetype you end up like wanting to play with. Or if you just want to make your own little mismatch, you can pull a little from each archetype, and you get a really different play experience depending on what you've made, rather than just like like hey, all my cards KO something. It doesn't feel like that in this game, which is cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like, so one thing too that I've heard a lot of other people talk to me about is the the game, or the decks really feel on theme, right? Like when you play the red demon deck, you really feel like you're sacrificing guys and playing out stronger guys. Like you really feel like you're playing demons. And same thing like with purple zombies, like you feel like you're bringing those zombies back from the dead, literally. Like it really feels like it's on theme.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that comes from the creator's experience from other games that do something similar, but it is cool that the card effects reflect what the archetype would imply that they do. That's really cool, in fact. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean that's like, with the knights, they're big on weapons in set one, and they have some spells and stuff to go with it, but and that's something like, you would expect knights to be good with weapons, and so they are. And like same thing, like ninjas, they're very agile, like they can attack twice. That's what the tenacious Eldritore does. And so yeah, and I mean obviously zombies bringing them back from the graveyard, like Necromancer is one of the cards that's been revealed already, and obviously some people have got to play around with Necromancer or Seraphina, and like players are already seeing that's a pretty fun combo to pull off.
Yeah, Yeah, and then just going into some of the examples, like ninjas not only being quick, they just have a bag of tricks, so they have a lot more spells than other archetypes out there. Like that's really cool to see. It's really cool that not every archetype got like, hey, here's 5 spells for you, here's 5 spells for you, and etc. Right? Like each one has their own strengths and weaknesses. I really enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so one thing that I've gotten a few comments online so far for is the life decking aspect, right? Because at some point, I'm not sure when, but at some point, someone decided that life decking was a TCG sin and you should never do it. It'll never work. So in this game, how does the life decking aspect of it feel? Like, do you ever feel like, oh man, if only I didn't mill this card, I could have won?
No, no, honestly, the life decking works in this game because, can I talk about Savior?
Yeah,
Because we have this Savior concept in this game that makes it feel rewarding and give you that little push and pull. One of the problems with life in most game systems is that it sometimes it's just this arbitrary number that you have to reduce to zero. And so like dealing damage or like taking damage doesn't really have an effect on the game until you hit zero and it just becomes like an empty resource. But life decking makes the game feel like real. Like you're literally watching your life ebb away as you play, and you have the chance to have that comeback factor in that combat. And I really think that's cool.
yeah, and see, and that's a lot of the players who have actually played the game, like they feel the same way, right? Because as you're milling those cards, a lot of times you're not focused on, oh no, this card got milled. You're focused on, did I get a savior? And is it a good savior? Like, is it the one I need right now? And so yeah, like that's definitely something that's really cool that a lot of people have noticed that have actually played the game, not just ones who like to comment on random videos. Um,
Yeah. I
so
think that's really good too. I mean, speaking on the savior, like just I think triggers in a game sometimes can help your community, right? One, it adds a different feel to the game every time you play the game. Like every no two games you sit down and play are going to be the same. You might not hit the same saviors. I mean, you already have the randomness of like cards in hand and what you can play, right? Plus, it gives uh while still rewarding skill, it still gives that little bit of luck to maybe give you that hope, that like little heart of the cards, like, oh, maybe this could save me. That's a
yeah.
really cool feeling to have while you play the game.
Oh yeah, because I know I was playing with David a couple weeks ago, and yeah, like it came down to where I had like 8 or 9 cards left in deck, and he had 2 swings, and it was like, okay, am I gonna get a savior on this first swing to block the second attack or not? And like those moments are really fun, and especially because in the game you don't lose until you have to draw or mill and can't, right? And so, the gameplay video that I actually just put out on the channel a week or so ago, in that video, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, I actually draw my last card for my turn. Like my last card in deck, I draw it for turn, and then I have to play out that turn and try to win on that turn, else I lose. And I ended up winning. And even then, though, right? Like I was playing against red. If I didn't have a critical attacker and maybe I had to swing for 1 or 2 damage first, there are cards in red where their savior mechanic deals damage to my Eldricore, and I could lose on my own turn because of that, because drawing my last card for turn. And like that's not something you see in a lot of games. Like at least I haven't seen it in a lot of games.
No, it's definitely a unique moment to this game, for sure.
Now, we've played a lot in our local shop, right? Like you and I have just sat down and just play tested quite a bit in the local shop there in Fort Walton. How how would you say that other players in the shop have reacted, right? Because like we've definitely had more than a few players end up trying out the game, especially whenever we started testing the raid deck. So far, like from what you've seen, how have other players reacted to the game once they've seen it and or tried it?
From what I've seen, it's been a lot of positive reinforcement for the game. Some people are drawn to the art, which is really cool. It is really unique art. Some people are drawn to just the combat style of the game, right? Like the fact that you're not stuck to a combat phase really draws people into a game like this. Or the fact that like, you know, you're having this or this minor Elder Core system so that it draws magic players and you don't have to dead draw land from their game. They can come to this game and their whole entire deck is live. Even the raid thing, like the raid concept offers another gameplay style for people who like to play like multiple on one. People that come from the old WoW TCG game, like this
Yep.
is a perfect transition, a new way to play card games. And people that like Commander, like raid is just another kind of like a variant of Commander. So
Yeah.
like it's a really cool way to sit down, have a little board game night with like 4 people, and you're like, hey, let's just play raid, 4 or 5 people, whatever you want to play, and let's just play raid. So honestly, overall, it's been pretty positive, and it's pretty easy to pick up, which is really important for a card game in today's market. right? Like
Yeah,
we already have so
definitely.
many complex games, so like it's nice to be able to see people of all card game skill levels sit down, pick up the game pretty quickly, and then start playing, and they just start enjoying it right away.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, that was something too. Whenever we went to TCG Con in Houston, we had people sit down to play the game who had never even played card games before. As a matter of fact, one of the pictures we posted was actually of a cosplayer who was cosplaying, and afterwards I asked her like, "Hey, by the way, do you play any card games?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, so what made you sit down and play ours?" And she was like, "I don't know, you guys seem nice." And it was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so like she actually really enjoyed it though, and like she was telling me how much fun she had, and so like it's stuff like that. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people who have told me that they tried multiple games at Houston TCG Con and Eldricore is their favorite. And like to be
Yeah,
honest, that is one thing I wish we could have gone to more conventions before the launch, because I definitely know the more people who have physically tried it, like we would have had a lot more eyes on the game.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's simplicity. I mean, the game in itself is not really that simple, but the learning curve to get into the game is simple, and that's just so important. Like we have so many games coming out, like I said, that are just way too complex. I'm not. I mean, I'm not downplaying sweaty tryhard players. I am a pretty sweaty tryhard player myself in card games.
You don't say.
Um, yeah, but it like when you're creating a game, that entry level's barring new players. It just doesn't feel like that for Eldricore, which I really like.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now
Yeah.
going back to the raid deck, so how has your experience been testing the raid deck? Because you were definitely one of the first ones to get in to test that. How has that been playing against that? Has it been fun? What do you think about it so far?
It's definitely fun and challenging, which is cool, which generates like replayability. That's the
Yeah.
word I would use. It's fun because you get to just you're playing with four people, right? Like that already is fun. Four and five people, you're hanging
Oh
out,
yeah.
cracking jokes with each other. Like that's one of the best way to. It's like a board game at that point, right? But using cards, and then it's just challenging enough so that you want to try it again and again and again until you get it right, which is really difficult. Until you get it right at least once, right, with your friends.
Oh
And
yeah.
honestly, that's fun. You don't even realize how challenging it is until the end of it, which is great because you're along for this ride and the journey's a great time, and then you get to the end and suddenly, I mean, like boss music could start playing because it's awesome. So that part's really cool. It's also really fun to be able to use your cards in a different way. So like it gives you access. It gives you some use to some of those cards you might not think are great in a 1v1 like scenario, but they might just be super useful in a raid scenario, and vice versa. So that's a really cool way to use the rest of the card pool.
Yeah, and to be honest too, like I think that it's one of those things where you really have to think outside the box too, right? Because like, when you're playing 1v1, certain things are going to happen, right? Like there's a good chance you're getting to 7 or 8 minor Eldritores. You'll be able to play a 7 or 8 drop, no big deal. But with the raid deck, the mechanics, you may not necessarily get up there. And so like it really forces you to kind of deck build differently. Like you would never take the same deck that you play in a raid into like an actual tournament, right? And I think that's something that's really cool because it really forces unique decks to be made.
Yeah, and it really makes you look at the rest of the card pool, which is like something you don't do with a lot of card games. I mean, every card game I played, and I played quite a few, there's just like there's bulk. There's bulk in every card game that I've ever played, and some cards I'll just never read again. Uh, but it's not the case in Eldritch because they can be useful, and oftentimes are useful in a raid setting, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, there was definitely some cards where like even, cuz once we started testing the raid, we were testing set 1 and 2 just to give some variety to the raid. And there were some cards that no one had really used in their set 1 deck, but suddenly they're a 4 of in the in the raid deck.
Yeah,
And it's like, man, this actually feels kind of broken in here. And so it was really fun to see that. Like, just to see players decide. Because, like, the first time you guys did the raid, y'all had no idea what it was, right? You were just going in blind, basically. And so after that, I just remember all three of y'all that were testing it the first time. As soon as we finished the first raid, immediately going into the extra cards you had on the side and being like, okay, hold on, this would be really good in here. This would be really good in here. Oh man, this would be so good. And like after a while of testing it, we got to a point where you guys had these crazy decks. Like it was just insane. And
yeah.
yeah, it was like I never would have thought that that combo of cards together would work, but I mean, in the raid deck, like it's different, and it was so much fun to see.
Yeah, it's really rewarding for people that love deck building. And
Oh
it's like
yeah.
it's a different way, it's a different world of innovation, right? Because in 1v1, like you said, you're just deck building for that 1v1 battle. Like you already can, it's predefined what you're playing against if there's a meta. But in Raid, man, like it's a different game. Like,
Yep.
I mean, it is. It's just a different game. And the rules are a little different. Your opponent's a lot different. It's just fun. And plus, you have to work as a team. It's like, that's really, I mean, you could try soloing it, but I just can't see that happening, right? But
Definitely not.
yeah. So that's a really cool part of the raid. Super fun.
So, do you have a favorite card?
I do have a favorite card. I was
Okay.
told not to really talk about it, but I do have
Okay.
a
So
favorite
you can at
card.
least say what the favorite, like the name of the favorite card.
All right, my favorite card in Eldricore TCG is the Necro Drake, and I heard it hasn't been revealed yet, so I won't reveal it myself. It is pretty dang cool, though. Mark my words.
So, okay. So that's definitely like, I think one of the things about Necro Drake when I was designing it was I wanted it, A, to feel on theme, and
Yeah.
B, I wanted the ability to at least be something semi-unique. Like obviously everything has been done in trading cards for the most part, right? Like there's not too many 100% unique ideas. But like I wanted the card to be powerful and something people would use, but I also wanted it to be fun and unique and on theme. And so I'm assuming you think I captured that based on your, that being your
Yeah, I
favorite.
mean, without revealing anything about the card, I think people play card games for three reasons. They like the art, they think the effects are cool, and it flows well. Like it flows well with your game. Next Drake hits all of those on point. The art is thick, it's within theme, its effect is fun and engaging while not being overbearingly overpowerful, and it just flows into so far, any deck I've played so far. It's been pretty cool.
And I think the cool thing too is right that going into set two, um,
Yeah.
you end up having some lower cost guys get really strong. And Necro Drake is a good set one card that can actually punish stuff like that. And actually Necro Drake ends up being really good in the raid deck because of stuff like that too. And so like I think it's really interesting the way Necro Drake is designed because like, you know, knights have the sword that gives +3 attack, right? And so, Necro Drake has a way of punishing stuff like that. And so like it's just really interesting the way the card can just punish certain things, but like it's not broken by any stretch, right?
Oh, I think it's like if you rank it against the other set one boss monsters, it might be the weakest boss monster by just raw stats of
Yeah,
a color, right?
yeah,
But I think it is one of the most versatile cards, in my opinion. I mean, I love using it. It's so versatile, and what it does for its color is so cool, regardless of being just the weakest across the board stat wise, which is I think so cool.
yeah.
Plus,
It
it's a
is,
dragon. Who doesn't like dragons?
and that's exactly it. And to be honest, like I think the original art of the card itself is really cool, but then that
Yeah.
is also one of the cards that got an alt art for the Kickstarter. So the text hasn't been revealed, but we have shown off what the actual alternate artwork looks like, and so that's one thing too. I think people are going to be excited to be able to get some of those because like that artwork is so cool, like both
It
the
is
regular
so
and the
cool.
alt art.
Yeah. Plus, like, man, undead, drag, like, you just put the two words together. Like, it just sound cool. You can imagine what it's gonna look like. It's so sick.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And so how is deck building in this game so far for you? Because so like, a lot of times in set 1 with a lot of different games, you end up having it to where like, okay, well these 50 or 60 cards are just flat out better. Like there's not really any point to, like once one or two major tournaments happens, like the decks don't really change until set 2. Could you see multiple variants of different colors and decks in set 1 based on the set 1 card pool?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's even multiple ways to play each color already, right? Like, I, I don't know how to explain this, but like, as each color evolves, as we were testing and we're like, oh, this color is really broken, played this way, we'd find another deck in the build of a different color that would smash that first one, and then we'd be like, oh wait, now we have to adjust this first one to match up to that second one and beat that, and then that second one would adapt, and you would just have this back and forth and back and forth. And of course, there's like different play styles too, right? Like each color doesn't have to be stuck playing your traditional aggro or traditional control. Like they have various cards in there that can swap you around to play different ways, and I think that's really cool. Plus, there are built-in answers in most colors to most things. So it
Yep.
just depends on what you want to lean heavily on responding to, right? So as the meta defines itself, let's just say like we brought up weapons. If weapons are really popular, people are going to deck build to handle weapons, and then those cards might not be so good if people suddenly start taking out weapons from their deck. So I
Yep.
think that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, and I think one thing too is like you can have the same color and have the same overall play style while it still feels vastly different, right? Because like we'll go with red for example, right? One of the red Eldricores buffs the follower by +1 HP and +1 attack for that turn. Another one, you sacrifice one of your guys who's currently ready and take one of theirs until the end of turn. And those are both red decks. In both of those decks, usually you play some type of sacrifice outlet, yet they feel so different. Like it could almost be a different color because of how different they feel. And like that just goes to show you. I mean, even with blue, right? Like whenever we were testing blue, most people played the tenacious Eldricore just because the other one you look at the other one at first and you're like, this just draws a card. Like, well, that's
Yeah.
cool, but I mean I'm damaging myself. Why would I even but now, recently in testing, there was a blue deck using the draw one, and it was really good. Like it was very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's crazy too because as people we're so like single minded. It's just human beings, right? We're such a if you only have so many people testing it. Once this goes out into the mass and the Kickstarter happens and it's paid up, like we're gonna have tons of people building decks. And for so long, like you said, we just thought like that was the only way to play blue. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
admit, I thought blue was unplayable because I just didn't. I'm not an aggro player, so I didn't think that style was very good. But then, like, we started experimenting with the other Eldritcore that we thought was the doo-doo butts. Nothing changed about the Eldritcore. We just thought it was
Yeah.
bad. And then we started playing with it. I was like, wait a second, blue might be one of the best colors. I was like, oh my god, like my thoughts of the game are constantly changing. You know, like what I think is good, better than the other, it's just constantly changing. And it's not because the cards are like constantly drastically changing. It's just because we're combining new cards together to make different strings and combos and making different play styles, and we're realizing, wow, this game is really adaptable.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's a very good thing for the game too, right? Because like I think that Eldritcore is one of those games where you could really see a top 8 or a top 16 that have vastly different decks. Like, I mean, obviously during set one, there's only 8 Eldritores to choose from, but like, you could literally have two of the same Eldritores and still have wildly different builds for them, just because of the way
Oh
the game
yeah.
is. Especially, I think with set one, right? Like between the set cards and the starter deck cards, I think set one had around 140ish cards total. And by a lot of standards nowadays, that's not necessarily a ton, right? Like a lot of games come out and have 150, 200 cards in their set one, but the problem is half of those are either unplayable or they're just not that great or they're vanilla cards. And so in Eldritore, like you had a lot of decisions. Like how many times were you building a deck and you end up with like 60 or 70 cards and you're like, okay, I got to cut a lot of these out.
Oh,
And
all the
so,
time.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
like, I cannot wait to see the card choices, right? Like, I think that's going to be one thing that's so exciting is to see tournaments and see players with these card choices have to decide like what they think is better. And I can't wait to see what the community comes up with. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and uniquely being a 50 card hard game for your deck, it makes those choices really dire. Like it pushes you to your limits when you're deck building. You can't just slam four of every card that you like and you're like, hey, that's what we're taking, you know? No,
Yeah,
I mean every time I built a deck, I started like that and I'd be at like 68 cards and I'm like, well, now I gotta start trimming, like, you know, and you start deciding what your ratios you want, and you're like, wow, you know, now I gotta start understanding deck building concepts, which is really fun for people who are really into deck building. So it's gonna be sick.
yeah, and I definitely agree. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited for with the game because like realistically, a lot of times whenever I'm building decks in early sets, it comes down to like, if it's a 50 card deck, I'll get like 36 really good cards and I'll be like, okay, cool. And then I got to find 14 junk cards to fill the slots. That's not how Elder Core, especially set 1 feels. Like especially for a set 1, like you end up wanting 70 cards and you're like, I can't play all these. Come on now.
Yeah, no, that's exactly true.
And
No,
and
I,
the
I definitely feel that way. Yeah.
And the thing is too, it's like that with every single color. I'm actually kind of impressed with how that came out because like it's not like okay, well with red and purple, you got some choices because they're good color. No, like every single yellow, blue, red, all of them, you you really have so many good cards that there's a lot to choose from.
It's gonna make every booster pack feel like a banger. That's for sure. Like you're gonna open every card booster pack up. I'm sure you'll be disappointed sometimes. You'll be like, oh, maybe I don't need that card for my color, but somebody else will need it for their color.
Oh
Just
yeah.
because there are like there's very little chaff. I honestly I can't think of many cards in fact or if any that are chaff in the set one. So it's really good. A really good way to build that game.
Oh
We're
yeah.
not trying
And
to fatten
so
pack.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you've also seen set 2 so far, right? And like
Yeah.
obviously set 2 is still being worked on, it's still being balanced, so it's not quite there yet, but as far as some of the abilities that you've seen in set 2, do you think set 2 is going to continue on like being as diverse and as open as set 1 was?
Oh yeah, no doubt. And I think what's really great is that set two is not just going to straight up knock set one out of the game. Something we're seeing really bad, really poorly in the latest games that are coming out is that like every set that's come out, you're kind of just forced to buy it. Otherwise, and more importantly, your previous set cards are unplayable. But it's just not like that in Eldricore so far. Like when we got to set two, I'm still using a lot of my set one cards in addition to a lot of my set two cards. I was struggling to thin down 68 cards into a deck when set one was out. I'm struggling to thin down 140 cards into a deck once set two comes out. You know, it's tough, but
Yeah,
that is really awesome.
and set 2 definitely comes with its own archetypes.
Yeah,
For at least two of the colors, two yellow and purple end up, they kind of stay on theme with set 1, which is pretty cool because it definitely expands that and gives you even more options to build with. But even with the new archetypes though, like you're still able to mix and match certain cards to where like like you could have an Eldraborn deck that plays a handful of ninjas as well and stuff like that. Like it's and obviously, you definitely want to have that variety in the deck building, right? Like you don't want to force
yeah.
players like you have to play 50 cards from the new set to play this deck, right? Like that never feels good.
Yeah, and just having the ability to blend archetypes, like making it so that your archetypes aren't stuck within themselves is really strong. Like even just like the Elder cores themselves aren't locked to archetypes often. So like that's really strong and really fun to play. And in set two, like I think with the release of more archetypes, it just expands the story more. And I don't want to spoil anything about set two, but like some some lore from set one gets merged with some of the lore in set two, and I think that's really cool.
Oh
Like
yeah.
as a geek for the lore, it's what got me playing WoW. Like that, I love that in card games. So it's really cool that happens.
Yeah, and that's definitely something we're working on, right? Because like whenever I started building the card game, I really wanted to make sure that we had a fleshed out world, right? Because that's one thing that I know a lot of people really enjoy is they want to see why these characters are doing what they're doing, right? Like they want to know like, okay, well, why would these red demons be attacking the knights? Like what why? And so that's something, we released a Serafina video recently, and I think a lot of people really enjoyed that. We're going to have more coming up. As a matter of fact, the lore for blue, red, and yellow has already been written, so we're just waiting to finalize that and get some videos out for that. So, like, that's going to be really exciting. And to be honest, I got really into it. Like, I've actually started writing lore that explains how purple came to be, right? Like how these undead came to be undead, and like it's gonna be like I'm like honestly, Netflix might pick it up. Joking, but seriously, like it's a really cool story. Like I think
It
people
is
are really
really
gonna
good.
enjoy it. Um,
Yeah, and you can see the art. I mean, the lore gets pulled on the cards too as they come by. So it's really cool to see. I'm excited.
oh yeah, definitely. So what do you think about the artwork? Because that's definitely going to be something that some people are not a fan of just because of how it was made. What is your opinion on the art? Like, how do you think it looks? Like, what do you think?
I think art is subjective, man. I play DBS as my main card game, and I hate Dragon Ball artwork. So artwork was not why I played that game. But I think what's great about the artwork is there are alternate arts in the game. If you don't like a specific artwork, you just go for an alternate art. There's different effort in the alternate arts, right? And one of the nice things about that is just remember it's a small company to start, right? Like
Yeah.
they're doing what they can, but what they focus on above art is a solid game, and that's what you're receiving right out the door. You're getting a top tier game, great gameplay to play. Yeah, maybe the art's not commissioned yet or at a high commission value, but like it's gonna get there. Like if I cared about anything about a game, I care about the art more. Or sorry, I care about the gameplay more. Sorry about that. That's
No, you're
incorrect. I
good.
care about the gameplay more than the art. Granted, I'm playing Dragon Ball, so obviously I care about the gameplay more than the art. But yeah,
Well,
that's my
and
2 cents on it.
also, like, as someone who's poured literally thousands of hours of my life into this game now, like, I think a lot of people need to realize too, right? Like, the art really is one aspect of it. And maybe it's different when there is like a whole team, right? Like, when you have an actual studio behind you and you've got 30 people working on a game, like, okay, well, then cutting corners and trying not to pay artists is one thing. But, I mean, I've done 90% of the work on this game myself, right? Like,
Mhm.
and so it feels like I've built an entire house, and some people are like, "Well, I don't like the brand of paint you use. That house is trash." And like that feels bad. Like personally, on a personal level, like that feels so bad to see when it's like, bro, I've put so much time and effort into this, and you're gonna boil it down to just one aspect of it, like that. And so yeah, like I do think though that the people who see the artwork and give it an honest, an honest reaction, like that was one thing we had a lot of people in Houston come up and be like, the art's why I wanted to try this game out. Like this artwork looks cool, and
Yeah, and there's something for everybody in the artwork too. Like I don't know if some of the archetypes are cute instead of being edgy, and I'm a big cute archetype kind of guy, so I like the cute cards. I mean, some of the cards are super edgy and like super dark and mysterious. So for people that like that kind of art, that's also there. So it's cool that you're drawing. Like this game is drawing from different archetypes. I mean, the knights look awesome. I love medieval stuff, and every single knight just looks like a warrior that what you
oh
would
yeah,
want on the battlefield with you. Just looks so sick. So I don't think the art is bad. I mean, I some people might be on their high horse. You can't please everybody.
oh
That's what
yeah,
it is, right?
definitely.
But what you are pleasing everybody with is what matters. And like I said, that's the gameplay. That's what we're here for.
Oh yeah, definitely. And again, like the game itself is so much fun. It definitely feels fresh too, because like again, obviously, no idea nowadays is 100% unique, right? And
Yeah.
same thing, like no brand new card game is going to be 100% unique because I mean that's just the way things are. But Eldricore really does feel like its own game. Like you don't feel like you're just playing a Magic ripoff, or you're not just playing a One Piece ripoff, or anything crazy like that. Like it really does feel like its own game.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of unique in the fact that the life deck is still there. Like no other game uses that anymore. So that factor is pretty unique, and I do enjoy that. Um, on that topic of like nothing is perfectly unique, sometimes that's good, man. Like don't break what's
Yeah.
working sometimes, like you draw for a turn, like that stuff like it's gonna be in every card game. I mean you have card games. I've played card games where they try to think way too outside the box and it kind of just killed the card game for me. I played this one card game, I'm not gonna name it here, where like your card game, your match was dependent like the weather outside or like where you were playing, and I was like, okay, like what am I doing here? Like this is I'm
Oh
not,
yeah.
this is not great. Like this is not increasing my pleasure for this game. So I like that it took the best parts of some card games, and then it added its flair and its own identity to the game, which is really sick.
Oh yeah. And so that's definitely a really good part of it. Now, as far as the comments in Twitch go, so just so y'all know, we are going to be doing a better how to play video at some point. Because I made one before, it's kind of bad. I was just trying to get something out there to help people. So we will be doing a how to play video or like a walkthrough video very soon, especially with the Kickstarter launching soon. I'm going to try to get that out. And then the most recent commentary gameplay video we did, like I did try to narrate everything and also bring the cards up on the screen to show kind of what's happening to help people follow along. Um, but kind of back to what you were saying though, you know, because we didn't try to reinvent the wheel, I think that's part of what makes it so easy to understand and easy to get into. Because like you don't have to learn this whole crazy thing. Because I will say, like in Houston, I had some members of the team go and try other card games, and I tried a few myself. And one thing that I found was when I was trying the other card games, I had to sit there and listen to a 30-minute like how to play spiel, and like it just felt so bad. And yet, when people came and sat down at the Eldricore booth and they started playing Eldricore, we were literally shuffling and playing within 30 seconds of them sitting down because we had a really good how to play sheet, out, which you've seen it before, the how to play sheets. And between the how to play sheets and just people feeling like having a comfortable feel with the overall flow, like it was just really easy to play.
Yeah, and I think that's ultimately super important. Like, the complexity of the game should come from the cards themselves, not from the mechanics of the game, right? Like, you want players to be able to play your game at the basic level, so that when they do start getting cards and they start getting more complex cards, they don't have to be like, oh, what was that rule again? Like, you're just playing the game, and now you're just reading new cards, and that's where you get the strategies and the tactics. It shouldn't be trying to figure out how to, you know, where's my life? It's like it's ridiculous stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I think it's
exactly.
really great for Eldricore.
Now, one other thing too that I wanted to ask about is, in your opinion, how does it feel trying to learn the different keywords? Because in set one, I think Elder Core actually has like 15 or 16 keywords, different keywords. How did it feel trying to learn those as you played? Like, did they come naturally to you? Like, was it kind of tough to remember some of them? Like, how did that feel trying to learn the keywords?
The majority of them are pretty obvious given their names, which is really good. If you're an English speaker, then it's going to be really easy for you, and not to insult anybody's intelligence. But if you come from any other card game at all, none of the keywords are the same per se as those card games, but you can't reinvent the wheel once again, right? So like
Yeah.
most of the keywords are going to be you're going to be like, oh, that makes sense. It just does this. And everybody ultimately will use their own colloquialism for everything, right? Like some people will call the graveyard the drop or so forth. But even
Yep.
then, so for like keywords, people will use what makes sense to them. But the effects are traditional and tried and true keywords most of the time. And some of them, and the new ones aren't too complex. Plus, if you ever do get confused, there's an easy resource to reach for to just look up a few keywords. You're like, oh, and then you'll just learn as you play. So it's good.
Yep, and then for those who don't know, what the plan is we're actually going to be doing tokens in the back of every pack. And so some of those tokens will just be minor Elder Cores to help people build those up so they can have them for their different decks. But then some of the tokens are actually going to have one keyword on the token. It'll be like a little cool artwork token type thing. And so that way, as you're opening packs, you're getting these tokens and you're reading what these keywords do. And you can obviously keep those tokens on you for later in case you need to pull one out in the middle of a game just to read it. And like Mike said, there's also really good there's a site or a spot on our website where you can go and look at the keywords too, and most of them are really easy, right? Like once you've played one or two games, like you'll end up kind of knowing your deck's keywords, and then as you play more, you'll kind of know what all the keywords do.
Yeah. And I'm sure as the game evolves and as you get more sets and more keywords come out, you'll just keep building on that knowledge. And even as I was playing set two, as I think about it, like there aren't very many new keyword skills to the point where it was overwhelming, right? So it's easy to pick up still in that sense, and that's good.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, the thing is too, right? Like set two definitely brought a couple new keywords, but like it didn't feel overwhelming. It didn't feel like, oh great, now I have to relearn this whole new list. Like it was just a few keywords, and to be honest, the keywords in set two are really cool. I know
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and say Snap is one of them, and Snap is something I think a lot of players are going to have a lot of fun with. Like it's been hectic trying to balance that so far, but I think once we get to where we need to be, like Snap is going to be a keyword people really enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Balancing it has definitely been a challenge, but it's also part of the fun of it, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
and the fact that the creator cares that much to balance it actually says a lot for a card game too. That matters. Like everybody cares about the card game they build, but to be able to set aside your own ego and fix cards that you built at one point and be like, hey, like maybe this isn't so great for my game. That shows that the game is going to work to develop itself to make itself be the best it can be. That's going to be great.
yeah, and to be honest too, like that's one thing that I had to learn from an early stage, because one thing that I found is as a developer, sometimes you develop cards and you actually get attached to the card. You're like, okay, this is a really cool effect. I think the effect, the artwork, this whole card, like I just love this card. But then as you're testing it, you're like, okay, this is too strong, or this just doesn't work, or this doesn't feel right with the archetype, or just whatever it may be. And like, I realize like to make sure the game is as good as it can be, like I can't be attached to it, right? Like I have to be willing to change it or sometimes just scrap a card. Like there have been a couple of cards that just got completely redone. As a matter of fact, Screaming Banshee. I
Oh, yeah.
so we had a private in-house tournament last November, just a little 8-person tournament just to test out some time rules and stuff like that. And Screaming Banshee was just the most broken card in set one. It was a purple card, and it was just absolutely nuts. And like I must have like tried to balance that thing like 4 or 5 times. Like I tried to just change this effect slightly, change the stats slightly, change this slightly, and like nothing worked. And so finally I was like, okay, we're gonna scrap the original idea and just give it a whole new, like a whole new ability. And to this day, like the card is still cool. It's still, it's definitely a good card, but it's not, game breaking. And I didn't try to force that card into the set just because I liked it.
Yeah, that's huge. Like I said, man, that card has changed, has gone through an insane amount of iterations.
Oh yeah, that's that card probably more than any other card has been changed. I think Ebon Curse Knight might be up there as well.
Yeah.
Um, but so yeah, as we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I'm excited to see Eldricore take off. I hope you guys buy in for the Kickstarter. I'm really excited to play this game with y'all. So that's it. Signing out from me.
Awesome. And yeah, so just so everyone knows, we will be launching the Kickstarter this Sunday. That's September 1st, and we're going to be launching it at 12 p.m. Central Time. So that is 1 p.m. Eastern Time and 11 or 10 a.m. Pacific Time. So yeah, just make sure you guys are ready for that, and hopefully everything will go smoothly.
All right.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and I will be trying to upload this on YouTube. So that way, if you're watching this on YouTube, hello to you as well. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Y'all have a great night.